The scream tore out of Kate Larkin's kitchen before she could stop it. On the floor, curled tight inside a dented army helmet, the puppy trembled, and beneath his tiny paw, half hidden by the leather sweatband, a name in faded ink stared up at her. A name that did not belong to her husband, a name that would drag two lives 40 years apart into the same trembling morning. Before we go on, drop a comment telling me what part of the world you're listening from, and hit subscribe so a story like this never slips past you. The porch light had been flickering for 3 nights straight when Kate first heard the whimper. She had blamed the bulb, then the wiring, then the small, dry storm that kept rolling across the hills of Elk Hollow, Ohio, without ever quite raining. On the 4th night, she stopped blaming anything. She just opened the back door in her wool robe, her slippers half on, and stepped out onto the boards that Ben had nailed down the summer before he died. 2 winters back. 2 winters that had made the house feel bigger than it was supposed to be, and quieter than any house has a right to feel. The whimper was small and wet, the kind of sound that could break a stronger woman than Kate. She followed it around the corner of the porch, past the rusting propane tank and the old milk crate she used as a step stool. And there, in the flickering orange light, she saw him, a puppy no bigger than a loaf of bread, brown as coffee with a splash of white under his chin, was shivering next to a piece of metal that Kate almost did not recognize. She recognized it. She just did not want to. Ben's army helmet, the dented one, the one she had promised herself she would donate for 11 years and never had. It sat on the top shelf of the hall closet, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag behind the Christmas ornaments. It should not have been on her back porch. It could not have been on her back porch. But there it was, tilted on its crown in a puddle of pine needles. And there the puppy was, crawling straight into it, as though someone had told him to. Kate froze. The porch light snapped once, twice, and held. The puppy circled inside the padded lining twice, tucked his nose under his tail, and fell asleep. For a long minute, Kate did not move. Cold air slid under her robe and up her back. Somewhere in the woods behind the house, an owl called once. She stared at the puppy, then at the helmet, then at the empty yard, and she felt the strangest, quietest certainty that something had begun that she was not going to be able to stop. She carried them both inside, puppy in helmet, helmet in her arms, helmet against her chest, where a heart she had thought was too tired to jump was jumping anyway. She set them on the kitchen table under the yellow bulb Ben had installed the last month of his life, and she made herself a cup of tea she did not drink. The puppy slept through everything, through the kettle, through her phone call to no one, through the small, confused sound she made when she finally looked into the closet and found the plastic grocery bag still there, still full, still hiding a helmet that could not possibly be on her table. She opened the bag, she lifted out Ben's helmet, she set it beside the one on the table. They were not the same helmet. Ben's was rounder, newer, dull green with a faint scratch across the crown from the time he had fallen off a ladder cleaning the gutters. The one from the porch was older, deeper in color, dented on the left side as though something heavy had struck it once and moved on. Its chin strap was gone. Its lining had darkened with time to the color of tobacco. Kate stood very still in her kitchen at 58 years old, in the middle of the night, and understood 2 things at once. First, that this helmet did not belong to her husband. Second, that whoever it did belong to had wanted her to find it. The puppy sighed in his sleep. She named him Biscuit before she meant to. It came out of her mouth while she was pouring milk into a saucer, and once it was said she could not take it back. He would not eat the milk. He would not drink water from the good china bowl or the tin dog dish she still had from the collie she and Ben had buried in the side yard. He would not sleep on the folded towel or the shoebox or the laundry basket she lined with a flannel shirt of Ben's that still faintly smelled like him. Every time she tried to move him, he howled. It was a small howl, but there was old grief in it, and Kate could not stand the sound. She put him back in the helmet. He fell asleep at once. 3 days went by that way. She fed him with an eyedropper. She warmed his milk on the stove. She carried the helmet from room to room and set it on a chair beside her while she watched the news, on the floor beside her while she cooked, on the pillow beside her while she slept. Every time she peered inside, she saw the same small brown ear and the same steady rise and fall of a chest no bigger than her thumb. On the 3rd afternoon, she reached inside to smooth the lining. Her thumb caught on a rough edge under the sweatband. She turned the helmet over, angled it toward the window, and there it was, plain as a name on a mailbox, written in ink that had aged but had not surrendered. Curtis Boone. And beneath it, in the same steady, careful hand, "If you find this, please bring me home to Linda. Fairview Road, Colton." Kate sat down on the kitchen floor with the helmet in her lap and the puppy in the helmet and read the words 3 times. Curtis Boone. She had bought this helmet, she remembered now, at an estate sale outside Colton 10 years ago. She had gone with her sister-in-law, Marjorie, on a Saturday when the sky was that particular shade of Ohio October that makes a person want to buy old things she does not need. She had paid $7 for a box of Army surplus and a chipped blue willow platter, and had never once, in 10 years, thought to look inside the helmet she had tossed onto the top shelf and forgotten. Someone had been waiting for her to look for 10 years. Someone whose name was not Ben. The puppy stirred. He looked up at her with eyes the color of wet oak leaves, and he did not blink until she did. She drove out the next morning. She did not know why she was in such a hurry. Colton was a 40-minute drive over 3 hills and 1 river, past the closed dairy and the auction barn that still ran on Tuesdays, past the sign that told her Colton had a population of 986 souls and had, in 1962, been the pumpkin capital of the county. She put the helmet on the passenger seat with a folded dish towel beneath it so it would not slide, and she buckled the seatbelt across it because she could not bring herself not to. Biscuit slept the whole way. Fairview Road was where the map said it would be, a gravel curve off the county road that dipped down toward a creek and back up again. The house at number 11 had once been white and was now the color of old newspaper. Its windows were boarded with plywood that had grayed in the weather. Its porch sagged in the middle where somebody had years ago tried to prop it up with a cinder block. A hand-lettered sign nailed to a fence post said, "Not for sale," and beneath it, in fresher paint, someone had added the word, "Please." Kate stood on the road with the helmet held against her hip and did not know what to do. A screen door slapped shut 2 houses down. A woman in a pink housecoat and rubber boots came shuffling out with a coffee cup and a look on her face that said she'd been watching Kate through the curtain for a while. "You looking for somebody?" the woman said. Kate held up the helmet, then thought better of it and lowered it. "I'm looking for a Linda Boone. This used to be her house." "Still is," the woman said. She squinted. In a manner of speaking, her name was Ada Delaney. She had lived on Fairview Road since her wedding day in 1971, and she remembered everything about everyone with the kind of clean, cheerful precision that certain small-town women make into a life's work. She invited Kate onto her front step. She pointed at the boarded house. "Linda's up at Silver Pines, the county home over by the reservoir. Fell in the spring, broke her hip, couldn't come back, wouldn't sell either. Says she has to keep the address in case anybody comes." "In case anybody comes?" Kate asked. Ada nodded slowly. "In case the army finally sends back what they took." She looked at the helmet in Kate's arms, and her mouth went a little slack. "Oh," she said. "Oh, honey." She poured Kate a cup of coffee she did not want. She told her the whole story in fragments and repeats, the way people tell stories they have told to themselves in the shower for 40 years. Curtis Boone had grown up in that boarded house, married Linda Truitt out of the Colton High School in 1978. enlisted a year later because his father had, and his father before that, was stationed at Camp Perry over on Lake Erie. Died in a training accident in the fall of 1982, 3 days shy of his 25th birthday. Something with a truck, something with a live round that was not supposed to be live. The army had sent Linda a folded flag and a form letter, and had never returned Curtis's personal effects. Not the ring off his finger, not the watch his grandfather had given him, not the helmet he had written her name inside of, the way boys with new wives sometimes did, so that if anything happened to him, some kind stranger might bring him home. She waited every day, Ada said, for that helmet mostly. Don't ask me why. She said Curtis promised her that if she ever needed to know where he was, she could look inside the helmet. Nobody knew what she meant. I don't think even she did, but she believed it. Kate looked down at the helmet on her lap. Biscuit made a small noise and shifted. "May I go see her?" Kate said. Ada refilled her coffee. "Honey," she said, "I don't think you have a choice." Silver Pines sat on a low hill above the reservoir. 4 brick buildings connected by covered walkways that a hard rain would drum on like a tin roof. Kate parked in the visitor's lot beside a station wagon that had a bumper sticker reading "Grandkids Spoiled Here," and stared at the front doors for a long minute before she went in. They took her name at the desk. They asked if she was a relative. She said no, but that she had something for Linda Boone that had been in her possession for 10 years by mistake. The nurse at the desk, a young woman named Marisol, looked at the helmet, then at Kate, then at the puppy asleep inside, and did not ask any more questions. She just walked Kate down a long hallway that smelled of oatmeal and antiseptic and lavender air freshener, and she stopped at a room whose door was open and whose light was low. "Miss Linda," she called softly. "You got a visitor with a real interesting bag." The woman by the window was smaller than Kate had expected. She sat in a wheelchair with a knitted lap blanket over her knees, her white hair thin against her scalp, her hands folded on the blanket like paper birds. She turned her face slowly. Her eyes were a pale, tired blue. "I'm sorry to bother you," Kate said. "My name is Kate Larkin. I live in Elk Hollow. I have something that I think belongs to you." She stepped into the room. She set the helmet on the small table beside Linda's chair. She did not know how to say what she had to say, so she just tipped the helmet slightly so that Linda could see the puppy inside, and then, gently, she pointed to the leather sweatband. Linda Boone did not move at first, then she moved all at once. Her paper-thin hand rose from the blanket and hovered over the helmet as though she did not trust her own fingers to know what to do. She touched the metal. She traced the dent on the left side. She let out a sound that was not a word. She reached past the puppy and lifted the sweatband away from the crown of the helmet, and Kate saw for the first time that the leather was not glued, but folded, and that inside the fold there was a slit no thicker than a knife's edge. Linda's finger went into the slit as if she'd made it herself, and out of it she drew a scrap of soft blue cloth, folded very tight and very small. Kate had not seen it. In 10 years of owning the helmet and 3 days of studying it, she had not once suspected there was anything inside the lining except lining. Linda unfolded the cloth on her lap. Wrapped inside it was a photograph, black and white and creased in 4s. On the porch of the boarded house, in a summer that must have been 1970-something, a young woman in a sundress sat on a porch swing and smiled with her whole face. Her hair was piled up and pinned, her legs were tucked under her. She was laughing at something the person taking the picture had said. On the back, in the same careful ink that had written the name inside the helmet, someone had written, "Waiting for me. Do not lose her." Kate looked at the photo. Then she looked at Linda. Then she looked back at the photo. The woman in the porch swing was not Linda Boone. Linda's mouth trembled. "Oh, Curtis," she whispered. She pressed the photograph to her chest, and the tears rolled down her cheeks so quietly that Kate did not hear them fall. Kate sat down in the plastic chair beside the bed and did not know what she was allowed to ask. Linda answered the question anyway, in her own time, without being asked. "That's my sister Rose," she said. "She died 6 months before Curtis. Ran her car into a bridge abutment on Route 60. He carried her picture with him because I could not carry it anymore. He said one of us had to." She stroked the photograph with her thumb. "Rose was the pretty one. Everyone said so. She was the one Curtis was going to marry, but she got sick, sick in the head, sick in her heart, sick in whatever way a beautiful girl gets sick when a whole town keeps telling her she's the pretty one. And she chose the bridge, and she chose the night, and she chose the speed, and Curtis chose me because I was what was left." Kate did not speak. "He never held that against me," Linda said. "Not one day. He said we were both loving her by staying together, and that was as good a reason as any. When he shipped out, he took her picture, and he wrote inside the helmet where to bring her home. And he wrote for whoever found it, 'Do not lose her,' because he did not want her to be lost. Ever again." The puppy stirred inside the helmet. He lifted his head. He looked at Linda with those wet oak eyes, and then he stretched his small paw across the rim of the helmet and laid his chin down on Linda's wrist, as if he had been waiting for the cue his entire small life. Linda laughed once, a wet, startled laugh that turned into a sob. "Hello, sweetheart," she said. "Hello, little one. Where in this world did you come from?" Kate did not know. Kate did not have the first idea, but she was going to find out. She stayed until the nurse brought Linda's supper. She helped Linda hold the spoon. She listened as Linda told her in a small, tired voice about the wedding she and Curtis had had in a Baptist church in 1978, and about the letter she had received in 1982 on army stationery, and about the folded flag that still lived in a cedar chest at the foot of her bed at Fairview Road, because she could not bring it to the nursing home without seeming to have given up. She told Kate about the ring Curtis had worn, a plain gold band from a Colton jeweler that had cost him $14 and had never come home. She told Kate that she had believed all these years that someday something of his would come back to her, because Curtis had promised, and Curtis had never once broken a promise. Kate meant to leave the helmet at the nursing home. She meant to hand over the puppy too. It felt right. It felt like justice in its small way. Linda shook her head at both offers. "He picked you," she said. "The puppy. Curtis would have said that means something. Curtis was a great believer in signs, and he would not have wanted me to argue with one when it walked right up onto your porch." "But the helmet is yours," Kate said. "I have what I needed from the helmet," Linda said. She held up the photograph. "This was inside for 44 years. Now it is out. Now it is with me. The helmet has done its job. But there might be more in it, honey. Curtis was that kind of man. He liked to build in more than one hiding place. You keep looking. You come back and tell me what else you find." She smiled a small, tired smile. "Bring the puppy," she said. "He does me good." Kate drove home under a soft rain that felt, for the first time in 2 winters, like company. The helmet rode on the passenger seat. Biscuit slept curled inside it. On the seat beside them, folded in a napkin from Silver Pines, was the small scrap of cloth Linda had asked her to keep, along with an address for Curtis Boone's brother Ray in Colton, and a phone number for a cousin named Wade, who might, Linda thought, know something about the estate sale where the helmet had first surfaced. Linda's memory was long, even where her hip had failed. Kate did not know yet that Ray Boone had been dead for 2 years. She did not know yet that Wade Boone had spent every one of those 2 years drinking alone in a rented room above the Colton hardware store, trying to work up the courage to do something he had promised his dying father he would do. She did not know that when Wade finally saw her name in a small item in the Colton weekly paper, Elk Hollow woman returns helmet to widow after 10 years. He would set down his glass and reach for the phone with a shaking hand. She did not know any of that yet. She only knew that when she got home and set the helmet on the kitchen table under the yellow bulb, the porch light stopped flickering. She stood on the back step for a long time in the soft rain and looked up at it. Steady, warm, small. It had not glowed like that since Ben died. She whispered his name once into the rain. Then she went inside and made a real dinner for the first time in 2 winters. And she gave Biscuit a piece of chicken from her plate, and she sat down at the kitchen table with a good lamp and a magnifying glass, and she began, very carefully, to unpick the lining of the helmet. It took her most of the evening. She had to be gentle. Whoever had sewn this lining had done it by hand and by candlelight, in the barracks of a young man not much older than her own son would have been, if she had ever had one. She lifted the pad and folded it back. She found the slit Linda had known about. She ran a fingertip past it, deeper into the crown of the helmet, and found another slit she had missed, and another slit under that. And finally, wedged into the deepest fold of the lining where a bullet had, thank God, never reached, a rectangle of paper folded 8 times smaller than a business card. Kate held her breath. She lifted it out. She unfolded it on the kitchen table under the light. It was a letter. It was written in the same careful ink as everything else. It was dated the 11th of October, 1982, 3 weeks before Curtis Boone died. It began, "My Linda." Kate wanted, more than she had wanted anything in a long time, not to read it. It was not hers to read. It belonged to a woman in a wheelchair 50 miles away who had waited for it since Kate was 16 years old. But there was a second paragraph, and Kate's eyes caught on the words as they slid past her thumb. And once she had seen them, she could not unsee them. The words were, "If this letter reaches you, then something has happened to me that was not supposed to happen. Do not believe what they will tell you. Take this to Sheriff Rowe." Kate sat very still. She read the letter through twice. Then she folded it back up, put it in an envelope, put the envelope in her purse, and did not sleep at all that night. Biscuit slept in the helmet on the pillow beside her, and every hour or so he made the small, sighing sound puppies make when they are dreaming about something they cannot quite explain. In the morning, Kate did 3 things. She called the Colton weekly paper and asked a young reporter named Delia Ames for the last 20 years of her time. She called Silver Pines and asked when the next visiting hours were. And she drove out to Fairview Road and knocked on the door of the Pink Housecoat house until Ada Delaney answered with a rolling pin still in her hand. "Ada," she said, "who was Sheriff Rowe?" Ada's face changed. "You better come in, honey," she said. The kitchen smelled of dumplings. Ada put the rolling pin down and made a fresh pot of coffee and told Kate what she knew. Elmer Rowe had been sheriff of the county from 1968 to 1984. He had been a good sheriff. Everyone said so. He had been Curtis Boone's godfather. He had baptized Curtis in the river below the reservoir when Curtis was 8 years old, because Curtis's own father had a fear of water and would not go in past his knees. When the army had come to Linda's door in November of 1982 with the news about the training accident, Elmer Rowe had been the second knock, an hour later, because Linda had called him before she called anyone else. Elmer had sat with her all night in the kitchen at Fairview Road. He had held her hand. And then, 2 months later, Elmer Rowe had resigned as sheriff for reasons he never fully explained, and had moved out of the county with his wife and his 2 grown sons, and had gone to live in a house on a lake in Michigan, and had never once in 42 years come back to Colton. "Everybody thought it broke him," Ada said. "Losing Curtis. He loved that boy like his own." She stirred her coffee. "Nobody ever asked why he had to leave the county to get over it. It didn't seem polite." Kate turned her coffee cup around and around in her hands. "Is he still alive?" she asked. Ada squinted. "Last I heard. Would be, 90, 91. He had a stroke last year, I read in the paper. Lives with his son now." Kate looked out the kitchen window at the boarded house across the road, and at the sagging porch, and at the fence post that said, "Not for sale," and "Please." And she felt, for the second time in a week, that quiet certainty that something had begun that she was not going to be able to stop. She was not a detective. She was a bookkeeper at a feed store in Elk Hollow who had lost her husband to a heart attack and had, for 2 winters, been mostly waiting to see what she was supposed to do next. But she had a helmet on her kitchen table and a puppy in the helmet and a letter in her purse from a young soldier who had known, 3 weeks before he died, that something was wrong. She was going to find out what. She started with Delia Ames. Delia was 26 years old and had inherited the Colton weekly paper from her grandfather when he retired. She still ran it out of the same storefront on Main Street, with the same manual typewriter on the same oak desk, and she wrote the same 3 columns her grandfather had written: local news, obituaries, and letters to the editor. She was smart, she was patient, she had a habit of listening with her whole face. Kate laid the letter on Delia's desk. She did not show her the whole letter. She showed her the first paragraph and the sentence about Sheriff Rowe and the date. Delia read it twice. "Mom," she said, "I think we need to sit down." They sat down. Delia opened a filing cabinet that had not been opened in a long time. She pulled out a folder marked Boone C. 1982 that contained her grandfather's original notes on the training accident at Camp Perry. She pulled out a second folder marked Camp Perry Miss C that contained clippings from every paper within 100 miles about anything that had happened at that base between 1980 and 1985. She pulled out a third folder marked Rowe E that contained her grandfather's private notes about a story he had wanted to write in 1983 and had, for reasons that were never explained in the folder, chosen not to. They read for 3 hours. By the end of the 3rd hour, Kate understood 2 more things. First, Curtis Boone had not been the only soldier from Camp Perry to die in a training accident that fall. In the 6 months before Curtis died, 3 other young men had died in the same kind of accident, in the same kind of circumstance, with the same kind of live round that was not supposed to be live. None of them had been from Ohio. None of them had had a hometown paper to notice. None of them had had a Sheriff Rowe to sit with the widow all night. Second, Delia's grandfather had made a phone call to Sheriff Rowe in January of 1983, 3 weeks before Rowe resigned, to ask about a rumor that Curtis Boone had reported someone in his unit for selling equipment off the base. The transcript of that phone call, in Delia's grandfather's careful shorthand, was in the 3rd folder. The transcript was 1 sentence long. It read, "Elmer will not confirm or deny, says he is tired, says he is done." Delia looked up at Kate. "Ma'am," she said, "you have a much bigger story than you know." Kate looked at her hands. "I don't want a story," she said. "I want to bring a man home to his wife." Delia nodded slowly. "Then we're going to need to talk to Wade Boone," she said. "Because if anybody on this earth knows what really happened to Curtis, it's the man whose father hid Curtis's helmet in the back of a closet for 40 years. Kate had not told Delia about the hiding. She had not told Delia about the estate sale. She had barely known it herself. But Delia's grandfather's 3rd folder had 1 more clipping in it, a small brown one from a Colton estate sale notice in the summer of 1992, listing the effects of one Raymond E. Boone moving out of state, and among the items to be sold in pencil at the bottom was written, "Army Surplus, Misk." 10 years later, in 1999, Ray Boone had moved back to Colton and had lived quietly until his death in 2023. And in 1999, apparently, he had not thought to buy back the helmet. Or, Kate thought, he had thought about it and had chosen not to. She left Delia's office at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with a list of names in her purse, a photocopy of the transcript, and Biscuit asleep against her collarbone. She drove to the address Linda had given her for Wade Boone. The rented room above the Colton hardware store had a wooden staircase on the outside that a person had to climb up like a fire escape. Kate climbed it with the helmet in one hand and the puppy in her jacket. She knocked on the door. A man opened it. He was in his late 50s, thin, with grey hair cut short and eyes that had the particular tired blue of a person who has not been surprised by good news in a long time. "You her?" he said. Kate blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You the woman from the paper, Elk Hollow, the helmet?" "Yes," Kate said. Wade Boone looked at the helmet in her hand. He looked at the puppy in her jacket. He looked past her, down the stairs, at nothing. Then he stepped back from the door. "You'd better come in," he said. "I have been waiting a long time to do the right thing, and I don't want to do it on a landing." His room was small and clean and full of books. There was a single bed against one wall and a kitchenette against another, and a wooden desk under the window with a coffee cup on it and a spiral notebook and, propped against the notebook, a photograph in a small silver frame. The photograph was of a young man in an army uniform, standing beside an older man in a sheriff's hat, on the porch of a house Kate now recognized as number 11 Fairview Road. The young man was smiling. The older man was smiling too, but only with the corner of his mouth, the way certain men smile when they are trying not to cry in front of a boy they love. Curtis Boone and Elmer Rowe. Fall of 1982. Kate sat down at Wade's kitchen table. Wade poured her a glass of water she did not need and sat down across from her. He looked at the helmet on the table and put a hand over his mouth. "My daddy stole that," he said. "I have known it my whole grown life, and I could not, until this morning, make myself do anything about it." Kate did not push him. She waited. "My daddy was Curtis's older brother," Wade said. 12 years older, different mothers, same father. My daddy did not enlist because my grandmother would not let him. My daddy resented Curtis for going. My daddy resented Linda for marrying Curtis. My daddy resented everything about Curtis because Curtis was the good one, and Curtis was the loved one, and Curtis was the one the whole town clapped for at the courthouse in 1979 when he came home in his dress uniform on leave. My daddy was not a good man. I'm telling you what I know, and I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him." Kate nodded. "When Curtis died," Wade said, "my daddy drove up to Camp Perry with his brother-in-law in a pickup truck. They told the officers on base that they were there to collect Curtis's personal effects for the widow, because Linda was too broken up to come herself. They came back with a footlocker and a duffel bag. Linda got the footlocker. Linda got the folded flag out of the footlocker and the dog tags and the wedding ring and Curtis's Bible with her name in it. Linda did not get the duffel bag. My daddy kept the duffel bag. He kept the helmet, and he kept the letters Curtis had written home but never mailed, and he kept the little notebook Curtis had been carrying in his breast pocket. He kept all of it in a footlocker of his own in the back of his hall closet, and he lied to Linda for 40 years, and he told me on the day he died that he had done it because he could not stand the idea of Linda having something of Curtis's that he did not have. Wade's hands trembled around his water glass. He set it down. "But that is not the whole reason he kept it," he said. "The whole reason he kept it was the little notebook." Kate leaned forward. "Is the notebook still here?" she said. Wade nodded. He got up, he went to the desk. He opened the top drawer. He took out a small green notebook the size of a wallet, its cover soft with age, its edges worn round. He set it in front of Kate. "I have not been able to read past page 4, he said. "I read those 4 pages the day my daddy died. I have not opened it since. I would like you to be with me when I do." Kate opened the notebook. Biscuit in her jacket whimpered softly against her chest. The first page had Curtis Boone's name at the top, and beneath it a date, the 23rd of September, 1982. Then a list of numbers. Kate recognized them almost immediately as inventory codes. The second page was more numbers. The third was the same. The fourth was a paragraph. The paragraph began, "Saw the sergeant loading a crate into a private truck at 0400, third time this month. Made a note of the plate." Below it was the license plate number. Kate looked up at Wade. Wade nodded. "Turn to page 5, he said quietly. Kate turned to page 5. Page 5 had a name at the top, only a name. It was the name of the man Curtis Boone had believed was stealing from Camp Perry in the fall of 1982. And beneath the name was a list of dates, and beneath the dates was a note in Curtis's careful hand that read, "Told Elmer. Elmer says he will handle it. If I am wrong, I will apologize. If I am right, I hope Elmer moves quickly." The name at the top of page 5 was not the name of any stranger. The name at the top of page 5 was Raymond Boone, Kate's own brother-in-law, Wade's father, Curtis's own blood. Kate closed the notebook very slowly. She placed her hand flat on the cover. She looked across the table at Wade. Wade Boone had begun, without making a sound, to cry. "My daddy was not the sergeant," he said after a moment. "My daddy was the buyer. He was running a small salvage business back home. He was buying the crates for pennies and selling them for dollars. There was a sergeant on the base who was getting the crates out to him. When Curtis figured out where the crates were going, he went to Elmer Rowe. That was the mistake, Miss Larkin, not going to Elmer. Elmer was a good man. The mistake was that Elmer went to my daddy first, before he went to the army, because Elmer was godfather to both boys, and Elmer thought he could get my daddy to stop before Curtis had to make a report." Wade wiped his face with the back of his hand. "My daddy did not stop," he said. "My daddy warned the sergeant, and the sergeant, or somebody in the sergeant's pay, arranged for a live round to be in a training rifle that was not supposed to have one. My daddy did not know it was going to be Curtis. He swore to me on his deathbed that he thought they were only going to scare him. He said he thought they were going to fire past his head at a target and shake him up. Not through his head, never through his head." Wade's shoulders shook. "My daddy killed his own brother," he whispered, "because he wanted a salvage business and 40 crates of tent poles." Kate did not move. Outside, on Main Street in Colton, a truck went past and rattled the window. Biscuit slept against her chest and did not know a thing about it. "After Curtis died," Wade said, "Elmer Rowe put it together fast. He came out to see my daddy in January, sat in our kitchen, told my daddy that he had 2 choices. Either my daddy would confess to what he had done, and Elmer would testify against him, and the sergeant would go down with him, and Linda would know what had happened to her husband. Or my daddy would live the rest of his life quiet, and my daddy would never speak Curtis's name aloud again, and my daddy would give the helmet back to Linda, and Elmer would leave the county and never come back, because Elmer could not bear to look at my daddy's face knowing what he knew. My daddy took the second choice," Wade said. "He did not give the helmet back. He kept it. He hid it. Elmer left. Elmer knew and did not turn him in, because turning him in meant telling Linda, and Elmer could not bring himself to tell Linda. He said in a letter to my daddy, I found that letter too in the same footlocker. He said, 'I will carry the sin of my silence to my grave, but you will carry the sin of the deed, and you will feel it every morning of your life.' Adee. And I have to say, Miss Larkin, my daddy did. He drank every morning of his life. He was cruel to my mother. He was cold to me. He never said Curtis's name once in front of me until the day he died. And when he said it like a man who had been holding a burning coal in his mouth for 40 years and finally spat it out." Wade wiped his face again. "That is what he said to me on the last day. He said, 'Wade, there is a helmet somewhere in this world with my brother's name in it. I sold it in '92 at an estate sale outside Colton because I could not stand looking at it anymore. I do not know who has it now, but if it ever finds its way home to Linda, you get down on your knees and thank God, and you tell her what I did. You tell her that Curtis was a good man and I was not, and that I am sorry. And if it never comes home, you tell her anyway. You tell her before she dies, or you will carry the coal your whole life like I did." Wade looked at Kate. "And I have not told her," he said. "I have not been able to, because my daddy died 2 years ago, and Linda has been alone for 42 years, and I did not know how to walk into that nursing home and tell an old woman that her husband died because his brother sold tent poles. I have been drinking myself sick for 2 years, trying to work up the guts. And this morning I picked up the paper and I saw an item in the county roundup about an Elk Hollow woman who had returned a helmet. And I put down my glass, and I have not picked it up again." Kate looked at the little green notebook on the table. She looked at the helmet. She looked at the puppy, asleep in her jacket. She thought about Linda Boone in the wheelchair by the window, holding a photograph of her sister to her chest and crying without a sound. She thought about the flickering porch light that had stopped flickering the moment she brought the helmet home. She thought about Ben, in his last summer, sitting on that porch with a beer in his hand and telling her that a person does not always get to know what they were sent into somebody else's life to do, but that a person had better be ready when the moment comes. "Wade," she said, "you are going to tell Linda, but you are not going to tell her alone, and you are not going to tell her yet." Wade looked up. "We have work to do first," she said. The next 2 weeks were the busiest 2 weeks of Kate Larkin's life. She and Delia Ames drove up to Camp Perry on a Tuesday and spent 5 hours in the base's personnel office with a young public affairs officer who did not know what to do with them at first, and then, when Kate laid the notebook on his desk and turned it to page 5, began to make phone calls. The sergeant Curtis had named in the notebook had died in 1996 of a heart attack in a trailer park outside Toledo, and had left behind a common-law wife who was still alive and still willing to talk. Delia drove up to see her on a Thursday and came back with a signed statement 3 pages long. The base opened a formal review. It was not going to be quick. It was going to take months, maybe years. But it was going to happen. The young public affairs officer wrote Kate a letter on official stationery, thanking her for what he called restoring a name to a family and a truth to a service that should have known better. Kate put the letter in her purse and did not tell Linda about it. Not yet. Elmer Rowe was 91 and living with his son in a house on a lake in Michigan. Delia found the phone number. Kate called it. A woman answered, then a man, and then, after a long minute, an old voice with all the strength worn out of it said, "This is Elmer Rowe." Kate told him who she was. She told him where the helmet was now. She told him what she had found in the lining. There was a very long silence. Then Elmer Rowe said, "Ma'am, I have prayed for 42 years that somebody would call me and say those words. I have prayed that I would be alive to hear them. I did not think I was going to be. Thank you." Kate said, "Sheriff, would you be willing to write a letter to Linda for me to give her?" Elmer said, "Ma'am, I would be willing to fly to Ohio on my son's arm and tell her to her face if she will have me." Kate said, "I will ask her." She did not ask her yet. Not yet. There was one more thing. There was the photograph. Kate had gone back to Silver Pines twice in that first week, both times with the puppy, both times without the notebook. She wanted Linda to have the piece of the photograph before she gave her the storm of the notebook. She sat with Linda in the afternoons and watched game shows and drank weak coffee out of paper cups. She learned that Linda had been an elementary school teacher for 38 years. She learned that Linda had gone back to school in 1984, 2 years after Curtis died, and had gotten her degree at the age of 32 because Curtis had always said she was smarter than any man on Fairview Road. She learned that Linda had never remarried. She learned that Linda had in a drawer beside her bed a small stack of Christmas cards from a young woman named Amber in Cincinnati, whose mother Linda had never met. "Who is Amber?" Kate asked. Linda smiled a small, private smile. "Amber," she said, "is a long story. I would like to tell you about Amber, but I would like a little more time before I do." Kate did not press. She went home. She lay awake. She got up and walked into the kitchen and looked at the helmet on the table, and at the notebook beside it, and at the photograph of Rose in the porch swing, and at the letter from Elmer Rowe that had arrived by overnight mail on the 9th day. Elmer Rowe's letter was 3 handwritten pages long. It was, without exaggeration, the most decent letter Kate had ever read. It admitted everything. It apologized for nothing that could not be apologized for, and it apologized for everything that could be. It ended, "Ma'am Linda, I have loved your husband for 57 years. I have loved him harder in the last 42 than in the 15 when he was alive, and I hope that when you and I meet again in whatever world comes next, he will forgive me. If he will, I will be able to look him in the face. If he will not, I will look at the floor, and I will deserve to. Yours, Elmer." Kate cried into her tea. Biscuit climbed into her lap and pressed his warm forehead against the underside of her chin and did not move for a long time. On the 15th day, the phone rang. It was Marisol from Silver Pines. Her voice was gentle. "Miss Kate," she said, "Miss Linda had a bad night. The doctor says she is stable but weak. She is asking for you. She says please come as soon as you can and please bring the little dog." Kate was in the car within 10 minutes. She drove fast on the county road, faster than she should have, faster than Ben would have let her. The helmet rode in a picnic basket in the back seat, wrapped in a clean tea towel. Biscuit sat in her jacket. The notebook and the letter and the photograph and the transcript were all in a manila envelope beside her. The whole rest of the story was going to have to happen today. She could feel it in her hands on the wheel. There was a wheelchair van in the visitors' lot when she got there. There was an old man being helped down its ramp by a middle-aged man who looked like his son. The old man wore a jacket with a small American flag pin on the lapel and a soft grey hat. He looked up when Kate got out of her car. He looked at the picnic basket. He looked at the puppy in her jacket. His eyes filled up. "Elmer Rowe," Kate said. "Ma'am Kate," he said. His voice was very small. His son, whose name was Frank, was the one who had made the arrangements. Elmer had insisted. Elmer had told Frank the morning after Kate called that if he was going to die, he was going to die having done this one thing, and Frank had not been able to argue. Kate had not known they were coming today. That was because she had not told Elmer about Linda's bad night, and Frank had not told her about the flight, because Frank had wanted to surprise her, and because Elmer had said, "Son, I have made her wait 42 years. I am not going to make her wait another day I do not have." Kate looked at Elmer. She looked at the doors of the nursing home. She looked at the manila envelope in her hand. "There is one more person we are waiting on," she said. Wade Boone pulled up 2 minutes later in a pickup truck that Kate did not know if he was legally supposed to be driving. He had shaved. He was wearing a clean white shirt. He held a footlocker in his arms. He did not put it down. "I brought all of it," he said quietly. Marisol met them in the lobby. She had gotten a private room ready. She had put a vase of fresh flowers on the small table by the window. She had put a chair for Kate on Linda's left, and a chair for Elmer on Linda's right, and a chair for Wade at the foot of the bed. She had put a folded flag from the Silver Pines commemorative shelf on the dresser in case they needed one. They did not need one. Wade had brought the flag. Wade had brought all of it. Kate went in first, alone, with the picnic basket and the puppy. Linda's face lit up like a small sunrise when she saw Biscuit. He climbed up onto the bed and walked across the blanket and lay down on her chest and did not move. Linda closed her eyes and breathed him in. "You brought me the whole world today," she whispered. "I can feel it in the room." "Linda," Kate said, "there are 2 men outside who need to see you. One of them you have not seen in 42 years. The other you have never met, and he has been carrying something for you for a very long time. Are you strong enough?" Linda opened her eyes. "Kate," she said, "I have been strong enough since the day I opened the door and saw those army men on the porch. Bring them in." Kate opened the door. Elmer Rowe came in first. He walked in on his own 2 legs with his hat in his hand, with Frank a step behind him. He crossed the room to Linda's bed. He stopped at the edge of it. He looked down at her. He did not speak. Linda looked up at him. Then she reached out with a hand that was as thin as tissue paper, and she took his hand, and she held it against her cheek, and she said, "Elmer. Oh, Elmer, where have you been?" Elmer sank to his knees beside the bed. "Linda," he said, "I have been running from you for 42 years, and I am sorry. I am so sorry. Curtis was killed because of what I knew and did not tell. Curtis was killed because I tried to fix it my way, and it got fixed the wrong way. I have lived every day since with what I did. I am here now to tell you the truth and to be judged by you, because you are the one on this earth with the right to judge me." Linda did not let go of his hand. She looked at Kate. Kate handed her the letter Elmer had written. Then she handed her the little green notebook. Then she opened the picnic basket and lifted out the helmet, and she set it on the table beside the bed. Wade Boone came in last, with the footlocker in his arms. "Miss Linda," he said, "I am Ray Boone's boy. I am Curtis's nephew, and I have brought you every last thing that belonged to him that my daddy kept from you for 42 years, and I am here to tell you why he kept it, and I am here to ask you to forgive a man who does not deserve to be forgiven, because I promised him on his deathbed that I would ask you." He set the footlocker down on the floor at Linda's feet. He opened it. He lifted out, one by one, a bundle of letters tied with brown string, a wristwatch, a Bible with her name in it, a stack of photographs, a gold ring on a chain, and finally, wrapped in tissue paper, a folded flag. Its blue field pointed the way a folded flag ought to point. Linda did not cry. Kate had expected her to. She did not. She held Elmer's hand. She looked at Wade. She looked at the flag. She looked at the notebook. She looked at Kate. Then she said, in a voice that was tired and clear and very kind, "Sit down, all of you. I have been waiting a long time to hear this story, and I would like to hear it slowly. Kate, honey, would you pour us all a cup of water? Marisol keeps a pitcher in the little fridge." Kate poured the water. She listened as Wade, in a voice that broke twice and steadied itself twice, told Linda what his father had done. She listened as Elmer, still on his knees, told Linda what he had known, and when he had known it, and what he had chosen, and why. She listened as the 2 men together told a story that they had never once told aloud in their lives, and that they had been dying to tell for 4 decades. She listened as Linda listened. Linda did not interrupt. Linda did not weep. Linda did not accuse. When they were done, Linda squeezed Elmer's hand once, and then she put her other hand on Wade's shoulder, and then she looked at Kate, and then she looked at the puppy asleep on her chest. "Boys," she said, "I have known for a long time that something was not right about how my Curtis died. I did not know what. I did not know who. I did not need to know. I loved him then, I loved him after, I love him now, and I will love him tomorrow. And no truth on this earth is going to change that." She turned to Elmer. "Elmer Rowe," she said, "you sat with me all night in my kitchen in November of 1982, and you held my hand, and you cried with me, and you did not lie to me. You did not tell me what you thought you should not tell me, but you did not lie. I have loved you like a brother for 50 years, and if you thought that 42 years of running was the price of what you did, I am here to tell you that the debt is paid, and that I forgive you, and that I want the last months of your life to be quiet." Elmer put his forehead down on the edge of her bed and shook. She turned to Wade. "Wade Boone," she said, "your father was a broken man his whole life. I did not know why until today. Now I know. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I forgive him easily. I'm going to have to sit with that." But I forgive you right now in this room because you carried a coal in your mouth for 2 years so that you could give me back my husband's Bible and my husband's ring, and there are not many men in this world who would do that. Your daddy was a coward. You are not." Wade wept openly. She turned to Kate. "Kate Larkin," she said, "you did not have to open your back door in November. You did not have to bring him in. You did not have to drive him to Colton. You did not have to unpick a lining that had been sewn shut for 44 years. You did not have to sit in Delia Ames's office for 3 hours. You did not have to walk up the stairs to Wade Boone's kitchen. You did not have to call an old man in Michigan. And you did not have to be here today to hold my hand while these 2 good men laid down loads they should not have carried alone. But you did all of it. And I want you to know that I know it, and that Curtis knows it, and that I am going to spend whatever time I have left thanking whatever power arranged for a puppy to crawl into your husband's helmet on your back porch." Kate could not speak. She just nodded and reached out and took Linda's other hand. The 4 of them sat that way for a long time. Marisol came in once with fresh water and left again without a sound. The afternoon light moved across the wall. Then Linda squeezed Kate's hand and said, "Honey, would you go get Amber for me? She is downstairs in the lobby. I called her last week and asked her to come today. I did not know these other blessings were coming today too. But she is here, and I would like her in this room." Kate blinked. "Amber," she said. Linda smiled the small, private smile. "My daughter," she said. Kate got up. She walked down the hall on legs that did not entirely belong to her. She took the elevator down. She stood in the lobby and looked around. A woman in her early 40s was sitting on the vinyl couch by the front door with a little girl of maybe 6 on her lap. The woman had Linda's tired blue eyes. She had Curtis Boone's mouth, exactly the mouth from the picture on Wade Boone's desk. She looked up at Kate as if she had been expecting her. "You must be Kate," she said, and stood up. "My mother has been talking about you for 2 weeks." Kate could not answer for a moment. Then she said, "Your mother is upstairs, and there are 2 other people up there she wants you to meet." Amber, whose full name was Amber Reeves and who worked as an accountant in Cincinnati, had been born in June of 1983, 7 months after her father died. Linda had been 18 years old. Linda had almost in her grief given the baby up. 2 people had stopped her. One was Rose's ghost, whom Linda felt in her kitchen every night that spring. The other was Elmer Rowe, who had, before he moved to Michigan, sat with Linda in her kitchen one last time and had told her that she was going to be the best mother in Colton and that Curtis would have been so proud he would have set the barn on fire. Linda had kept the baby. Linda had raised the baby. Linda had lied to the town because Colton was a small town in 1983 and had said the baby was Curtis's, born early. Nobody in Colton had done the math out loud. Curtis had been at Camp Perry for months before he died, but nobody had done the math out loud because Curtis had been loved, because Linda had been loved, because sometimes small towns are cruel and sometimes they are kind, and Colton in 1983 had chosen kind. Amber had grown up believing that Curtis was her father. Linda had told her the truth on her 18th birthday. Amber had asked one question, which was whether Curtis had known she was coming, and Linda had told her that yes, he had known, and that his last letter, which Linda had never seen, would have said as much. Amber had believed her. Amber had believed her for 24 years. The last letter, of course, was folded in Kate's purse. Kate brought Amber and the little girl upstairs. She opened the door of Linda's room. Linda saw Amber. Linda's face did something Kate had not seen a human face do before. It became, in one long, soft moment, 30 years younger. "Sweetheart," Linda said. "Sweetheart, come here. There is a whole family in this room today. Let me introduce you." Amber walked in. The little girl walked in behind her, holding her mother's hand. Amber saw Wade. She had not known Wade existed. Wade saw Amber and did the thing his eyes did when a family resemblance he had spent a lifetime denying suddenly stood up and walked into a room. Wade sat down heavily on the edge of Linda's bed and covered his face. "You have his mouth," he whispered. "Oh, honey, you have his mouth." Amber knelt down beside her mother. She looked at Elmer. She looked at Wade. She looked at Kate. She looked at the helmet on the table, and at the flag on the dresser, and at the little green notebook on Linda's lap. Linda said, "Amber, honey, this is Elmer, who was your daddy's godfather, and this is your daddy's nephew Wade, and this is Miss Kate Larkin from Elk Hollow, who brought your daddy home. Kate, this is my Amber, and this is my Sophie, and Sophie has been waiting to meet a puppy for 6 years. So if you would set that puppy down on the floor for a minute, I think she and he would have some things to discuss." Sophie squealed. Biscuit lifted his head. Kate set him down carefully. The puppy, who had barely been on his feet twice in his short life, wobbled once, righted himself, and marched across the floor to the little girl as if he had been sent for. Sophie sat down cross-legged on the linoleum. Biscuit climbed into her lap. Everybody in the room, all at once, laughed the small, wet laugh that people laugh when they are watching something small and good happen after something long and hard. Kate handed Linda the last letter, the one from Curtis, the one Kate had found deep in the lining of the helmet on the third night of unpicking. Linda held it. She looked at Kate. She looked at Elmer. She looked at Amber. "Would one of you read it?" she said. "My eyes are tired today." Elmer reached for it. His hands were shaking too badly to hold the paper. He gave it back. Wade reached for it. Wade Boone read Curtis Boone's last letter aloud in that room, and his voice broke on every third line, and nobody stopped him, and nobody hurried him, and when he finished, nobody spoke for a long time. The letter had been written 3 weeks before Curtis died. It began, "My Linda." It said the things a young husband away from his young wife says, but it said them the way Curtis said things, which was carefully. It said that Curtis was doing what he had come to Camp Perry to do. It said that he was working with good men and 1 or 2 bad ones. It said that if the letter reached her, then something had happened, and if something had happened, she was to go to Elmer, and Elmer would know what to do. It said that if a child was coming, and Linda thought a child was coming, then Curtis wanted her to know that he had already decided to be that child's father, whatever the circumstances of the child's making. It said that he had made that decision in a chapel outside Camp Perry on a Sunday, and that he had told the chaplain about it, and that the chaplain had told him he was a better man than he needed to be, and that Curtis had answered, "No, sir. I am the man I need to be because I am married to Linda." The letter ended, "If there is a girl, name her Rose, if it will not hurt too much. If there is a boy, name him whatever you want, and tell him his daddy loved his mama enough to write this letter, and enough to come home, and enough to raise him if the coming home works out, and enough to be his daddy from anywhere if it does not. Yours, always, Curtis." Amber Rose Reeves put her face down on her mother's blanket and did not lift it for a long time. Her middle name was Rose. Her middle name had always been Rose. She had never known why. Now she did. Linda stroked her hair with a paper-thin hand. "I named you for my sister, honey," she said, "but he asked me to first. He asked me to before he even knew there was a you." Sophie, who was 6 and who had a puppy in her lap, looked around the room and did what 6-year-olds do, at moments too big for them. "Mama," she said, "why is everybody crying? The puppy is very happy." The whole room laughed and cried at the same time. Kate slipped out to the hallway to give the family a moment. She stood by the window at the end of the hall and looked out at the reservoir, at the pines around it, at the small breeze pushing rings across the water. She thought about Ben. She thought about the porch light that had stopped flickering. She thought about how, 3 weeks ago, she had been a woman who talked to a kettle. Marisol came up beside her. "Miss Kate," she said. "I don't know what you did in that room, but you did something." Kate wiped her eyes. "I opened a back door," she said. "That was all I did." They kept Linda at Silver Pines. The bad night did not become the last night. Linda got stronger over the next month, not by much, but enough. Amber began driving up from Cincinnati every weekend with Sophie. Wade Boone came to see Linda 3 afternoons a week and mowed the small strip of grass around Silver Pines for the maintenance crew because he needed something to do with his hands and because he had, for the first time in 2 years, hands that did not shake. Elmer Rowe went back to Michigan on a plane with his son and lived another 7 months. He wrote Linda a letter every Sunday. Linda wrote him back every Wednesday. On the last Sunday of his life, he wrote her one line which said, "I will tell Curtis where you are, and I will tell him you are all right." Frank read it aloud at his father's funeral. Nobody in the room knew what it meant. Linda knew. The Camp Perry review took a year. The name at the top of page 5, the buyer, was Ray Boone, deceased. The Army noted it. The Sergeant Curtis had named was also deceased. The Army noted that too. But 2 officers who had covered the deaths, 3 of them, counting Curtis, were still alive and were still drawing pensions and were not deceased at all. Both of them were quietly stripped of rank posthumously. One was fined. One saw his pension reduced. The Colton Weekly ran the story in a single dignified column. Delia Ames sent Kate a framed copy. Kate hung it in her kitchen beside the yellow bulb. Wade Boone did not go to jail. Wade Boone had not committed a crime. Wade Boone had inherited one. Wade Boone gave every dollar of his father's estate that had come from the salvage business. The estate had come with a small ledger, and Wade had gone through it dollar by dollar to a scholarship fund at the Colton High School in Curtis Boone's name. The scholarship was for a young person from Colton who intended to serve. In the first year, it paid the tuition of 2, in the second of 3, and in the third of a young man named Marcus Delaney, Ada's grandson, who had, at 18 years old, decided to be an army nurse. Ada Delaney cried at the ceremony. Kate cried at the ceremony. Linda, who was 90 and in the front row in her wheelchair with Sophie on her lap, did not cry. She laughed. She laughed the whole time. She said afterward to Kate, "Honey, I have done enough crying for one lifetime. I have decided that from here on out, I am mostly going to laugh." Kate drove home from that ceremony under a soft rain, the same kind of rain that had followed her home from the nursing home the first time, and she thought about Ben and about Curtis and about how all the good men she had ever known had a way of doing quiet things that only became loud a long time later. Biscuit, who was no longer as small as a loaf of bread, sat on the passenger seat beside her. He was tall now and lean, and the color of coffee with a splash of white under his chin, and he had a habit of laying his head on her thigh when she drove, exactly the way he had laid his chin on Linda's wrist that first afternoon in the nursing home. He was the best dog Kate had ever had. He was the only good thing about the flickering porch light. He was also, Kate had begun to suspect, the reason she was going to make it through her 60s as a person who was not lonely. She still did not know exactly where he had come from. She had asked Wade. Wade had asked around Colton. A woman named Peggy Marsh, who ran a small rescue out of her farm on the county line, remembered a litter of 6 puppies she had taken in early that November from a stray mother who had wandered onto her porch in the middle of the night. The mother had died 2 days later. Peggy had fostered the puppies. On the 4th night, a small brown one with a splash of white under his chin had somehow gotten out of the whelping box and out of the kitchen and out of the back door, which had a screen with a small tear that a dog no bigger than a loaf of bread could just barely fit through, and had disappeared into the pine woods. Peggy had searched for him for 2 days. She had assumed he was lost to the coyotes. Elk Hollow was 6 miles from Peggy's farm. 6 miles. Through pines, through creeks, through hillside. At 6 weeks old. Straight to a back porch on which a helmet with a name in it, a name that no one in the county of Colton could possibly have known about, had been waiting for 10 years in the top of a hall closet, wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. Kate did not try to explain it. Kate had stopped trying to explain it. Kate had a friend now, a woman named Linda, in the county nursing home, and a family she had never expected, and a dog on the passenger seat with his head on her thigh, and a porch light that did not flicker anymore. And she had decided sometime in the past year that certain things were not built to be explained. They were built to be received. She drove home. She parked the car in the gravel drive. She got out with Biscuit at her heels. She went up the back porch steps that Ben had nailed down the summer before he died. She unlocked the back door. She hung her keys on the hook. She walked into the kitchen. The helmet sat on the shelf above the table, where she had put it the day after everything. It was clean now. The lining had been sewn back up carefully by Kate's own hands. Inside the sweatband, the name in ink still read Curtis Boone, and beneath it, in the same careful hand, "If you find this, please bring me home to Linda, Fairview Road, Colton." Kate had not erased it. Kate would never erase it. He had come home. Linda had come home. Amber had come home. Wade had come home. Even Elmer, God rest him, had come home on a plane on his son's arm, one last time to a nursing home in Ohio, to sit on his knees beside a bed and ask a woman he loved to forgive him. Kate had come home too. She sat down at the kitchen table. Biscuit put his chin on her knee. She reached down and scratched him behind the ear. She looked out the back door, through the screen, past the porch, to the small strip of yard where a puppy no bigger than a loaf of bread had once shivered next to a piece of metal, on a night when a porch light would not stop flickering. The porch light glowed steady tonight. It had glowed steady for over a year. Somewhere in a bedroom at Silver Pines Nursing Home, a woman named Linda Boone was probably reading a Sunday letter from Michigan, or a Wednesday letter she had just written and not yet sent. Somewhere in Cincinnati, a woman named Amber was making dinner, and a little girl named Sophie was drawing a picture of a puppy in a helmet, because Sophie drew that picture at least once a week. Somewhere in Colton, a man named Wade Boone was mowing a strip of grass for free at a nursing home he had promised to mow, and was probably going to eat a slice of pie in the cafeteria afterwards, because Linda had told him he had to. Somewhere in a small hillside cemetery outside Colton, a stone marked Curtis Boone, 1957-1982, beloved husband and father. The word father had been added 6 months ago, and Amber had cried when the mason set it, was catching the last of the sun. And on a shelf above a kitchen table in a small house on the edge of Elk Hollow, a dented army helmet with a young man's name inside sat quiet and safe. And it had, at long last, done its job. Kate laid her hand on Biscuit's head. She sat in the kitchen and did not talk to the kettle. She did not need to. She said quietly, out loud, to no one in particular, "Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, sweet boy on the porch." Biscuit thumped his tail once against the linoleum. Outside, the porch light burned. And that, friends, is the story of a puppy who chose a helmet, and a helmet that chose a woman, and a woman who chose to open a door on a cold November night when she could have chosen not to. If it moved you the way it moved me, do me the small kindness of leaving a like and drop a comment telling me the name of a person you have been meaning to bring home, in whatever small way home means to you this year, and hit that subscribe button so the next story finds you, because there is always another door, and there is always another light, and there is always, thank God, another puppy on somebody's porch.